What was the closest you've ever been to death? A vascular malformation in my brain ruptured. I mean, technically they said my heart stopped in the ambulance after they finally got me out of the house. I was flown to a couple hospitals before I finally had brain surgery. I really should be dead. Long story, hope you like reading. Was in the U.S. Army and deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. I was in intelligence and had a knack for math, physics, and chemistry, and my memory has always been extremely high. Don't know why, but I've always had an incredible memory. My S2, the head of intel in my unit, recognized this and made me their liaison to the Navy EOD bomb defusal unit attached to us. Why we didn't have an Army EOD unit with us, I don't know. Fast forward a couple of months, and a BID, vehicle-borne IED, blows up a meat market in our battle space. All local casualties. 14 dead, 16 wounded. My S2 can't wait for the official report to arrive in about 2 weeks, so he gives me a GEA camera, tells me to make a report, and has me take a helicopter ride over to the site with the Navy EOD guys. We get to the site and it's a terrible scene. Body parts, bone fragments the size of Skittles, an old man without an arm, and a kid with half his face blown off, etc. I take a deep breath and do my thing. We get to the nearest FOB, forward operations base, and I break away from the EOD guys to get some chow and meet with one guy that I knew in intel that was attached to the local infantry unit based at the FOB. As I'm walking to the chow hall, I go deaf and get knocked down. An RPG landed probably 10 to 15 feet from me. A small firefight ensued, but nothing came of it other than shooting at a mountain for 10 minutes. Drone pilot tagged the shooter, and he got blown up by an A-10. Found out I had a small piece of shrapnel in my left leg. Thankfully it was nothing serious, just had to pull it out and stitch up my leg. Got some nice painkillers as a result and tinnitus as I grew older. Later, I suppose to give myself some closure, how close to death I was. I did all the math and ballistics. I instantly regretted doing that, since I determined, with someone even checking my work, that the difference between just getting that little scar on my leg and getting hit dead center in the chest was equivalent to the shooter's pulse or a light breeze. It completely changed my perspective on life. Backstory, I have this device called a pacemaker, which keeps my heart beating at a rate that can keep me alive. Without it, my heart still beats, but it's really slow, and blood pools in one part of my heart without really getting where it needs to go, and sometimes it just stops. So I need it to live. Unfortunately, I live in the U.S. During the recession, my father was making enough money that we weren't poor, but his job didn't have medical benefits. So I didn't have health insurance, because we were in that weird middle spot of too poor to afford it, but too rich to get welfare services. Since it's a pre-existing condition, no insurer would take me any other way. My pacemaker started to fail during that time. I could feel when it would cut out, because the dark would start creeping around the edges of my vision, until I couldn't see anything at all, and I would just stay very still and wait it out. There was nothing my parents could do anyway, so as a teen, I just kept it quiet. This went on for months as the episodes happened more and more often, until it was happening multiple times a week. One day I got home, and I was so tired, I laid down and took a nap. Only I couldn't get up. I couldn't tell if I was awake or sleeping anymore. I just knew I couldn't get up anymore. Somewhere I heard my dad asking me if I was alright, and I assured him that yeah, I was just tired. At one point I realized I was in a car, and when my vision started clearing up I realized I was in the air, with both my parents in the room. My parents can't really stand each other, so it was a big deal, and I started crying, because I knew we couldn't afford for me to be awake. I was shot in the face while being carjacked. The bullet entered in about an inch in front of my ear, went through my cheekbone, through my maxillary sinus, through my maxilla bone, then hit the dense massive bone above the roof of my mouth and stopped. The ballistic energy from the shot however blew a hole all the way through the roof of my mouth a size slightly smaller than a ping pong ball, and a combination of gravity and the blood pouring out actually dislodged the bullet, and it fell through that hole, and into my mouth. I ended up spitting it out onto the ground thinking that it was a tooth. Wasn't until later that I found out it was the bullet, when medical personnel informed me that the bullet was no longer in me, and that I somehow didn't lose any teeth. Was swimming in a pool on holiday when I was 11. I was swimming near the bottom when suddenly there was a sharp pain on the top of my head and then black. I woke up lying at the bottom of the pool, water making its way into my lungs. I managed to swim to the surface and proceeded to vomit up half the pool. I just hung on to the side, barely conscious for about 20 minutes. Turned out some guy jumped in feet first and landed on my head. What was especially scary is that no one reacted or noticed. If I hadn't have woken up in time, no one would have noticed as I died at the bottom of that pool. Nothing compared to what the others have said, but I almost drowned when I was a little kid. Went into the big people side of the pool, which I now respect as an older person, and just sank. Very recently actually, I was driving in the middle lane going 80 miles per hour, which is very normal on the highway I was on, and decided to pass a car, and, obviously, passed on the left. I checked my mirror, and then my blind spot, then my mirror again. There was a car some distance back, but I figured that he was probably also doing about 80, and with the distance he was away, I had way more than enough time to safely pass. The car in front of me had another car in front of it, but then no one at all in front of either. Before I could even pass the cars, I didn't accelerate, since I was already doing 80 and they weren't. The car that was way off in the distance came flying up, and was on my ass, blaring his horn. There is no way he would have had to slam on his brakes, unless he was going 100 plus, when I first saw him. So like a sane person, I finished passing, and allow myself to get a few car lengths ahead, before going back to the middle lane, and letting this nutjob be on his way, barreling down the left lane. It was really just the 4 cars around. It was a slow Sunday morning. For some reason, when I got back to the middle lane I thought to check my mirror again, to make sure there was no one behind the jackass in the SUV. He sped off doing 110 or so, and I thought that was that. I'm still doing 80. Then he decides today is a day he wants to kill someone, so he gets in the middle lane suddenly, no blinker, and slams on his brakes. Not a brake check tap, full on tire squealing slam. Thank God I knew there was no one in the left lane because I swerved. I took my foot off the gas, and did a very dumb thing and hit the brakes. I missed rear-ending this big SUV by inches. My car did a full 360, and at one point I think, may have almost tipped. I was on the phone with my dad, hands free, and apparently all I said was oh shit, oh shit, oh shit until I came to a stop in the swale between the left and HOV lanes. Had I rear-ended him, my little car would have crumbled, and I'd likely have died, best case been severely injured. I can't imagine being so careless and reckless that I would potentially kill someone just to be petty. Realistically, petty over nothing, since I didn't cut the guy off, or act in any way. I still don't know what he was thinking. Was swimming in a pool on holiday when I was 11. I was swimming near the bottom, when suddenly there was a sharp pain on the top of my head and then black. I woke up lying at the bottom of the pool, water making its way into my lungs. I managed to swim to the surface, and proceeded to vomit up half the pool. I just hung on to the side, barely conscious for about 20 minutes. Turned out some guy jumped in feet first, and landed on my head. What was especially scary, is that no one reacted or noticed. If I hadn't have woken up in time, no one would have noticed as I died at the bottom of that pool. I was drunk and launching fireworks. Something went wrong, and I inhaled huge amount of that toxic smoke. Dunno what did they put in there, but I instantly passed out for a good hour or two. It was incredibly hard to force myself to breathe, and I started seeing that light in the end of tunnel. It was a New Year's night and we were in the mountains, so impossible to call ambulance or seek help. Friends continued drinking and having fun, while I was lying there dying. Another one was when I nearly drowned when got into rip current with a surfing board tied to my foot. I was exhausted after hours of surfing when waves started hitting real hard. My father held a load pistol on my stomach cause I was skipping school. Back in February of this year, I started feeling very weird at work one day. You know that soft focus dream sequence thing they used to do in old television shows? It was like that. Had a co-worker take me to urgent care. They took one look at me and said there's 2 emergency rooms close by, and which one would I like to go to? Not if, but which one. I got to the and after the doctor had a look at me, I was sent upstairs to the ICU. The reason? Normal blood pressure is around 120/80. I was sitting at around 200/140. Long story short, a family history of hypertension and years of bad habits got me to that point. I spent the weekend there. Saw 8 doctors in total. One of them said that I was very close to having a heart attack or stroke. That first night in the ICU, I laid there staring at the clock on the wall. This state-of-the-art heart hospital had an old analog clock. Instead of counting down the time I was there, I started counting up the time I was still alive. 8 o'clock. Still alive. 9. Still alive. They actually tapped into an artery in order to keep a moment-by-moment monitor on my BP. The screen was flashing red and beeping all night. I'm better now. What a coincidence. Literally an hour ago I almost choked to death. I was at work and had to take my medication. Like an idiot, I was talking while my pill was in my mouth, and it jumped down my throat and lodged itself sideways. I couldn't breathe or talk, and I almost blacked out. Then I ran to the drinks, like an idiot, and tried to chug some tea to get it down. Thankfully, it worked. That was so fucking scary, guys. I was bullied pretty violently as a kid. Another girl tried to drown me once on a daycare field trip to a pool. I realized I was gonna die there, and I was almost at peace with that knowledge, but my body freaked out independently, and I scratched bleeding grooves into her arm. She let me go. Threw up water, somehow turned out fine. I was almost pushed down a couple flights of stairs, but narrowly caught the banister, so made it out uninjured that day. I almost choked to death on Mentos, the fresh maca, once, but as my vision was tunneling into darkness, and I accepted this stupid death, it kinda slipped sideways, and I was able to breathe again. When I was 3 years old I was playing with my older brother, 6, and I fell into a thaw river. The river descended from a mountain. Water was barely above freezing point and the current was really strong. The river ended in a waterfall of approximately 20 meters high, 65 feet. I didn't know how to swim, I was toddler. My survival instinct made me grab her from a root of a big tree in the side of the river. My brother started screaming for help. My mother was nearby, so she came running and pulled me off. I had swallowed a good amount of water, and I was almost hypothermic. 5th grade, 2005. House I grew up in was on a street where most of the rainwater pooled on our side. It was raining so hard there was a landslide and our school was closed, so my sister and I decided to go get palm tree skins and go sledding as we had done several times before. Well, I take one step into the water in front of our house, and I immediately get knocked off my feet and washed down the street. My sister chased after me and pulled me out about 5 feet from the storm drain that I easily cold been sucked into. Still owe her for that 15 years later.